Governance is the relationship between the governed and those who govern. Good governance should be perceived as the exercise of power, which is free of abuse or corruption, which is transparent, accountable, equitable, and providing for broad public participation. And from that point of view, e-governance is primarily about the use of ICTs in order to achieve good governance. In that sense, where is the role of international organizations, for example? We'll come back to it. The idea is that in the provision of services that provide for good governance, there is a role on different levels. Like there is more and more talk about governance or the lack of governance in certain huge companies and banks, which led to serious problems today. Then you have the level of government. We've been talking about e-governance these days at this conference. But also there is a level of international organizations which provide on the one hand, they provide information on a broad variety of public goods for which these organizations are responsible. Just one example, to which I will come a bit later. There is a convention in our organization on the environment, on the public access to information on the environment, and the people working with that convention have created a web portal, which is something like a clearinghouse mechanism for the exchange of information, comments, which citizens from different countries can make comments on what their access to information on the environment is. So this is both the idea of providing information on certain practices related to the environment, but also this is the idea of providing public participation, that people can make comments on this website, this clearinghouse. And when we talk about the issue of my presentation, the single window, the role of the international organizations is to provide best practice on the experience of certain countries. Basically, if we look here again at the elements of good governance, freedom of abuse, freedom of corruption, the idea of the single window is to increase efficiency for the private sector, and especially for the work of the various agencies which work which control foreign trade flows and the information related to the goods in foreign trade. And also it provides a powerful tool to eliminate the conditions for corruption. And in that sense, when we distribute information on best practices, we make recommendations on these best practices. This is one of the other tools in which the international organizations provide on their level tools for good governance. Well, I will not stop long on these slides. In our organizations, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, this organization has been one which provides standards, norms, and best practice recommendations. It has provided them for more than 50 years. So there are various tools in various areas which provide for improvement of governance practices. I mentioned just some of them in the area of trade, also in the area of transport. There are certain tools which contribute to the elimination of negative practices, like the electronic documents, like the electronic tier carnets. And I've already mentioned the idea of the conventions in environment. Let me now move to the idea of a single window for export and import clearance. Yesterday, Mr. Dusan Kričej mentioned, well, he finished his presentation with a slide in which he put several elements for the future development of e-government and governance. And I was very much surprised how all these elements that he put on the screen are very closely related to the issue of the single window system. Like first of all, he was talking about integration. In this case, the idea is about the integration of all foreign trade information flows into one. Then the idea about submitting data only once. If you harmonize data that is provided by different agencies and you submit it only once, this is a very powerful tool for improving efficiency and all these issues that e-governance and good governance have to solve. And also he was talking about reusability of data. This is exactly the idea. If you, and there comes also our role as an international organization, to provide international standards, international code lists and definitions of data elements. If all the countries' agencies harmonize their requirements for data with these standards and definitions and the international codes, then one can provide a possibility for all agencies across borders to use the same language and create a possibility for computers to talk to each other. The idea is that, what is the problem which the single window in foreign trade has to solve? And it's related to the very concept of trade procedures and trade facilitation. And this problem has been always that in order to carry out the foreign trade operations, experts calculated some 50 years ago that traders have to provide like 40 different documents to approximately 40 different agencies with often repeated data. And the solution, which was sought by the idea of trade facilitation, has always been to simplify or cut procedures and document flows and align them with international standards. And since the last 15 years, to automate documents and processes. So the result would be that goods and trade information move faster across borders. And the idea of the single window is answering exactly this topic. It's not easy, and the whole idea is that it is not easy, probably not because of technical difficulties, but because of the idea that every agency which controls information flows perceives this as a kind of part of its power. And also individual agents working in those agencies also perceive the control of the concrete document. For example, at the border, the possibility for the different agents to control a document gives them possibility to control certain secondary revenues. But these can be both legal and illegal types of revenue. So agencies and individuals are not always eager to abandon their control of the flow of information and documents to one single agency that would lead this idea of a single window. Well, you were saying today that one has to start with analyzing the process and creating the restructuring, and only then moving to the idea of creating a technical solution. And it's exactly the same argument here with the single window for foreign trade, only the idea is even more complicated because of all these interests related to money in different agencies, both legal and illegal.